So you don't understand? Well, perhaps it is difficult.
Well, perhaps your husband's position is not quite clear to you.
I've already told you. I want to understand fully just how black the case against my husband is. I said to the police Leonard was at home with me at 9:30, and they do not believe me. So perhaps someone saw him leave Miss French's house, or you saw him on the street on his way home.
Now, your husband cannot think of or remember anything helpful of that kind.
So it will only be his word and mine. And mine. Thank you. That is what I wanted to know.
But Mrs. Bowles, please don't go. There's so much more to be discussed.
Not by me.
Why not, Mrs. Bowles?
I shall have to swear, shall I not? To speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
That is the oath you take.
And suppose that when you ask me when the Leonard will come home that night, I should say,
well,
there are so many things I could say.
Mrs. Bowles, do you love your husband?
Leonard says I do.
Leonard Bowles believes so.
But Leonard is not very clever.
Mrs. Bowles, you are aware that you cannot by law be called to give testimony damaging to your husband.
How very convenient.
And your husband
is not
never
my husband.
What?
Leonard is not my husband. We went to a form of marriage in Berlin. He got me out of the Russian zone and brought me to this country. I did not tell him that I had a husband living at the time.
He got you out of the Russian sector and saved into this country. You should be grateful to him, aren't you?
One can get tired of gratitude.
Leonard Bowles never injured you in any way.
Leonard injured me? He worships the ground I walk on.
And you?
You want to know too much.
Now, I think we must be quite clear about this. Your statements have been somewhat ambiguous. What exactly happened on that night of October the 14th?
Leonard came home at 25 minutes past 9 and he did not go out again. I've given him an alibi, have I not?
You have. Mrs. Bowles?
Yes.
You are a very remarkable woman, Mrs. Bowles.
And you are satisfied, I am.
I'm damned if I'm satisfied.
All right.
She's up to something, that woman, but what? I don't like it, John.
She certainly hasn't had hysterics all over the place.
Oh, cool as a cucumber.
What will happen if we put her in the witness box?
God knows.
Prosecution would break her down in no time, especially if it's Myers.
If it's not the Attorney General, it probably will be.
What's your line of attack?
The usual, keep interrupting as many objections as possible.
What beats me is that young Beau is convinced of her devotion.
Oh, don't put your trust in that. Any woman can fool a man if she wants to and if he's in love with her.
No, he's in love with her, all right, and he trusts her completely.
More fool, he never trust a woman.
French, how say you, Leonard Bowles? Are you guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Members of the jury, the prisoner stands indicted for that he, on the 14th day of October, murdered Emily Jane French. To this indictment, he has pleaded not guilty. And it is your charge to say, after hearing all the evidence, whether he be guilty or not. One moment, Mr. Myers. Members of the jury, the proper time for me to sum up the evidence to you and instruct you as to the law is after you have heard all the evidence. But because there has been a considerable amount of publicity about this in the case in the press, I would just like to say this to you now. By the oath which you have just taken, you swore to try this case on the evidence. That means on the evidence you're about to hear and see. It does not mean you are to consider anything you have heard or read prior to taking your oaths. You must shut out from your minds everything except what will take place in this court. You must not let anything else influence your minds in favor of or against the prisoner. I am quite sure you will do your duty conscientiously in the way I have indicated. Yes, Mr. Meyer.
If it pleases you, my lord. Members of the jury, I appear in this case for the prosecution, and my learned friend Wilfred Robarts appears for the defense. This is a case of murder. The facts are simple and to a point are not in dispute. You'll hear how the prisoner, a young and you may think not unattractive man, met the acquaintance of one Miss Emily French, a woman of 56. How he was treated with kindness by her and even with affection. The nature of that affection you'll have to decide for yourselves. Dr. White will tell you that in his opinion death occurred sometime between 9:30 and 10 p.m. on the evening of the 14th October last. You will hear the evidence of Janet Mackenzie, Miss French's faithful and devoted housekeeper. The 14th of October. It was a Friday and was Janet Mackenzie's night out. But on this particular occasion, she happened to return for a few minutes at 9:25. She let herself in with a key, and upon going up to her room past the door of the sitting room, she'll tell you that in the sitting room she heard the voices of Miss Emily French and the prisoner Leonard Bow.
That's not true. It wasn't me.
Janet Mackenzie was surprised, since as far as she knew, Miss French had not expected Leonard Bow to call that evening. However, she went out again, and when she returned home at 11, she found Miss Emily French murdered. The room in disorder, a window smashed, and the curtains blowing wildly. Horror-stricken Janet Mackenzie immediately rang up the police. I should say that the prisoner was arrested on the 20th of October. It is the case for the prosecution that Miss Emily Jane French was murdered on the evening of the 14th October last by a blow from a cot, and that blow was struck by the prisoner Leonard Bow. I will now call Inspector Hearn.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Robert Hearn, Detective Inspector, Criminal Investigations Department, New Scotland Yard.
Now, Inspector Hearn, were you on duty the evening of the 14th October last when you received an emergency call?
Yes, sir.
What did you do?
Well, sir, with Sergeant Randall, I proceeded to 23 Ashburn Grove. I was admitted to the house, and they established that the occupant, who I later ascertained was Miss Emily French, was dead. She was lying on the floor and had received severe injuries to the back of her head. An attempt had been made to force one of the windows with some type of implement thought to be a chisel. The window was broken at the catch, and there was glass strewn about on the floor. I later found fragments of glass on the ground outside the window.
Now, is there any significance to finding glass both inside and outside the window?
Well, sir, the glass on the outside is not consistent with the window being forced from the outside.
You mean to say that if the window had been forced from the inside, there had also been an attempt made to make it look as if the window had been forced from the outside?
I object. My learned friend is putting words into the witness's mouth. He really must observe the rules of evidence.
You have been engaged on several cases of burglary and housebreaking.
Yes, sir.
And in your experience, when a window is forced from the outside, where is the glass?
On the inside, sir.
And in any other cases where the windows have been forced from the outside, have you also found glass on the outside of the window, some distance below on the ground?
No.
No? Will you go on?
A search was made. Photographs were taken, and the place was fingerprinted.
And what fingerprints did you discover?
Well, those of Miss Emily French herself, those of Janet Mackenzie, and some which later proved to be that of the prisoner, Mr. Leonard Bow.
No others?
No others.
I see. When when exactly did Mr. Vole first get interviewed by you?